Hello, so today we are going to cover one of my favorite topics, blood sugar. So blood sugar connects to so many body systems. And if you've ever felt like you're getting super hangry in between meals, this is related to your blood sugar dropping, okay? Also your hunger hormones, but your blood sugar is gonna really control how you feel in between meals, if you feel energized, if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling super groggy and anxious, this can be related to blood sugar, okay? It's also gonna influence different sex hormones, weight status, so many things. So I'm hoping you'll take away from today better understanding of the role of blood sugar in weight management, how we can go beyond calories, also get into a few daily habits, my meal method, and then just an overall understanding of what metabolic health is. So again, I am Kelly. I am a registered dietitian, personal trainer. I got into this field from my love of fitness and athletics, and now I practice what's called functional nutrition, where I am able to really assess people at a holistic level by looking at blood work, different biomarkers, their food, lifestyle, stress, all of these things. And you do want to know the terms insulin, blood sugar, and fasting. We're going to touch on those today. So insulin is a hormone secreted from our pancreas. Blood sugar is a thing we can measure through blood testing. Your doctor probably has measured it for you. But it also is a term for how carbs are broken down into glucose in the body. So glucose, blood sugar are the same thing. Proteins and fats can also be converted into glucose through different processes. And then fasting is just being in a state of not eating or digesting any food when your blood sugar is low, or at least it should be. Metabolic health is an overarching way to look at someone's health through these 5 different key areas that we can measure. So blood pressure, blood sugar, triglycerides, cholesterol, and waist circumference. And so I always want to take a systems approach and know that everything is connected. So the reason I'm really passionate about blood sugar and insulin is because it really can influence all of these different areas, okay? It can influence your blood pressure, it can influence weight, all of these things. And so I do want you to just understand the physiology of insulin resistance, which is when our cells stop responding as well to this hormone insulin. So if you see this photo here on the left, the glucose here comes from our food in the stomach, or it's also stored in the liver and secreted into the bloodstream. And then the pancreas responds by secreting insulin, which is shown as a key, which can go and unlock the muscles or the fat cells to take in the glucose and use them for energy or be stored there. Okay, so our fat cells can store excess glucose, which leads to fat, gaining weight and gaining body fat. And so in insulin resistance, when our pancreas has to start secreting more and more insulin, because our cells are not responding as well to that, then the glucose eventually can start to build up. And this is where we see problems with diabetes. But even far before we have diabetes, we can have higher levels of insulin show up. And we know that this is going to make it harder for us to lose weight. It's going to have downstream impacts on other hormones, like our thyroid hormones, our sex hormones, hormones that influence how we gain muscle, even our hunger hormones potentially. So we want to keep insulin levels low, and we want to understand how to do that through food habits and potentially supplements and medications if needed, because it really is important for decreasing our risk of developing diseases or presenting with symptoms of some of these diseases. So when I look at like PCOS and endometriosis, I have many clients that have these things, and they're really related to blood sugar and inflammation. And so if we can do something to help control that, it's going to really be important. Same with Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, depression, all of these things can be related to blood sugar. And so as a dietitian that practices from a more functional medicine lens, I just want you guys to know more of what that means. So I really love this visual I grabbed from a training that I'm doing that explains how one condition can have many imbalances. Okay, so being overweight can be related to not just food and diet, but also these hormones, inflammation, genetics and epigenetics, our mood disorders. One imbalance, such as I'm going to say insulin resistance, inflammation is on this slide, but I could call insulin resistance some would call it a condition. I call it an imbalance, can also relate to many conditions. Okay. Nice. And so when I work with people, we always want to start with what is our calorie needs, what's our protein needs, right? But first, I want them to understand what influences that. And we think that exercise has so much influence on how many calories we're going to need, right? Like, how many calories did I burn in that workout? How many calories do I need today because I didn't work out? Do I need less? Should I eat less? But I don't even think of exercise as really influencing our daily calorie needs, but over time, influencing our basal metabolic rate. And so it depends if we're going to do exercise that helps us to build muscle. So I am really big on what's called muscle-centric medicine. Another practitioner I know uses this term, and I just love it because our goal is to help you to build muscle, maintain muscle, eat in a way that helps you maintain muscle, because it's going to influence your basal metabolic rate. Your metabolism isn't slowing over time as you age. You're losing muscle. That's what's happening. That's why. But think of muscle as like a big engine. Okay. So it fuels how much we need. And if our engine gets smaller, we're going to need less. We're going to have less calorie needs. We want to get that engine bigger and bigger and bigger so it needs more fuel. And we can eat more of that means. We can have more carbs and not worry so closely about how it's going to influence us. Also, our insulin, thyroid hormones, all of these hormones influence the basal metabolic rate too. So that's another reason why these habits to regulate blood sugar and insulin are so important. So hopefully that made sense. And we're going to get into how to regulate insulin through food. Okay, so it's also just important to know that anybody of any body size can have prediabetes, can have high insulin, can have problems with insulin resistance. I know that my previous hormonal issues, which were really related to irregular menstrual cycles, anxiety, skin issues, I was having super unstable blood sugar. I know because of the way I was eating and just not what I know now. I know so much more now that I'm like, what was I doing? So it's not just about the weight. People with bigger bodies can have really great metabolic health. Okay. These are two of my favorite quotes from two books that I love that really explain this topic in depth. So check them out. And so before we get into food, one other thing I want to explain is the hormone hierarchy. So stress and our lifestyle can really influence blood sugar as well, not just food and muscle mass, but we of course want to optimize those things. But if we do have a really stressful lifestyle, it's going to cause blood sugar spikes from our liver. When our body's in a stress state, even if it doesn't have food, it's going to think it needs available energy, right? Glucose is the first quickest form of energy for our cells to utilize. Some people do get into a fat burning state more quickly and easily because they're really metabolically flexible, which is a good sign of health. And some people just don't. So we want to make sure that we are managing stress. Our cortisol is our stress hormone, and oxytocin is what I call the love hormone. So you get that hormone when you are cuddling with somebody, when you are doing something calming like meditation, yoga, getting a massage. It doesn't just have to be from a partner. It could be cuddling with a pet. Doing things that cause you to be in that calm side of your nervous system every day is something I remind so many of my clients, as well as just managing overall lifestyle stress is so important. And so this is an example of a client that I have who is a lawyer and has gone through law school and right afterwards started working with me, and her insulin was too high. I know it says optimal, but it says in control. So some lab companies will say up to 30 is in control, which is definitely not optimal. Another thing about functional medicine is we're always looking to the optimal ranges, not just what's normal. Okay. So I like to see more like less than 7 is a good optimal range. Okay. So one of the first habits to learn is macronutrients. Assessing how much you have in each meal and throughout your total day. So this is something I do for my clients as well as teach them how to do for themselves. Maybe you have done this before with an app like MyFitnessPal where you type in foods. That's a great place to start. It does take some measuring at times with things like oil and meat. How much is 3 ounces? How much is 3 tablespoons? Once you've done some of that measuring and you have a little more idea, you can really start to eyeball it and you don't need to be super precise. But I think going over this chart here so you can understand what are proteins, what are fats, what are carbohydrates. This is also in the ebook that I'm going to send and have linked with this in the YouTube show notes. So check out this Venn diagram so you can really understand which foods have which, and then do some actual tracking so you can see that. And the reason that we want to balance out all of these is because they're broken down differently and they influence our blood sugar differently. So starting with the protein, not even going to go into the function, just know that you need all of these to live a healthy life and have a healthy body. But the protein is going to feel really filling. It's going to be broken down slowly. It takes about 3 hours to break down protein, and it's not going to cause much rise in blood sugar and insulin at all. Then the fats, also pretty similar. They're going to be pretty filling, activating our hunger hormones. They are going to be broken down also pretty slowly over about 3 hours. And then we have the carbs, which are broken down much more quickly. We have carbs that are rich in fiber, which is a term for parts of compounds of plants that are harder for our gut to break down, and they are fermented in the gut. Some of them are not even broken down. Some are a little bit more. So when they have more fiber, think of like an apple with skin. It's going to slow how it's broken down, and that is going to cause less spike in blood sugar compared to apple juice, which is just the juice, the liquid part. It's going to have no fiber, and it's going to cause a really fast rise in blood sugar. But as you'll see on the next few slides, how we pair foods also matters. So if you eat just that 30 to 70 grams of carbs alone, it is going to cause a quicker rise in blood sugar than if you eat it with protein, fat, and some fiber. So that is the goal, is we want to keep that blood sugar more stable. I call it the rolling hills of blood sugar, rather than having roller coasters that are really high and really low. Because over time, that's going to cause more risk of insulin resistance, high blood sugars, chronic diseases, whereas the rolling hills are going to keep us in the short term feeling really stable energy, but also just preventing those really big insulin needs from our pancreas. Okay. So this is a pretty basic, broad recommendation for grams of protein, fat, and carb. I don't even really want people to start by being super precise about that, but just knowing that we want to spread our protein throughout the day is super important. Same with fat. Fat's going to be a little higher in calories, so most people aren't going to have 40 grams in one meal probably, but I do like to see a little bit more than like 3-4 grams of fat in each meal. So doing the tracking is really the best way to get to see if you're following this, but also just starting to think of your meals in this format. So for example, when I was having breakfast today, I was doing eggs and sweet potatoes. Okay, so the egg is going to have protein and fat. Sweet potato is going to have carb and fiber. It's 2 ingredients, and I hit that. Okay, yes, you could adjust it a little bit if you wanted to have higher protein. You can do egg whites in there. You could do a protein powder on the side, whatever. But just hitting all those components is going to help your blood sugar stay really stable, and you're going to feel really full for 3 to 5 hours after that meal, hopefully. And so this glucose goddess on Instagram, she's a biochemist. She has a really great book on blood sugar, and I just love some of her visuals. So you can see the different forms of bread because of the different components in them. The amount of fiber, the amount of fat over in the avocado toast is going to influence how slowly our blood sugar rises, right? And again, we're going for that slow rolling hills look. The sourdough bread is a little more confusing to me because it seems kind of like a white bread, but just the way that it's fermented ends up influencing blood sugar differently. So sourdough bread is still a really great option. And then this one I absolutely love, the chocolate cake. So you can see here that the chocolate cake eaten after a large chicken salad with probably olive oil, vegetables, chicken is going to be influence is going to be so influential on how the cake is broken down. So we can have our cake and eat it too. And we don't have to cut out these sweet foods. We just watch the portion and we pair it with protein, fat, and fiber. Then the next one is a smoothie. Okay, she doesn't put what's in the smoothie, but let's say it is fruit juice, a little bit of milk, and a bunch of fruit. Okay, so that's pretty low in protein and fat and mostly carbohydrate. So that's going to cause a pretty big spike in our blood sugar compared to if we would do just a little bit of fruit and a good amount of full fat yogurt, maybe some avocado in there, peanut butter, protein powder. Okay. But she shows an omelet with avocado as a really great way to break your fast in the morning with your first meal and keep that blood sugar really stable. So in the morning is a great time to really focus on this. Your blood sugar is a little more sensitive right in the morning. The next one is adding almonds in with a sweet treat like M&Ms. Okay, so there are times when I would want people to increase carbohydrates. That's something you can work with a dietitian on a more individualized basis. But if you are having hypothalamic amenorrhea or missing periods, pregnant breastfeeding, recovering from a time of just really low carbs for a long time, again, it's not that we don't want to eat carbs. We want to eat the fiber-rich carbs. We need those vitamins and minerals, but we just want to work on the portions and the timing. And then times when we could decrease carbs is if we do know we have PCOS, we have diabetes, insulin resistance, endometriosis, gut issues, or we just have a desire to lose body fat. So I'm hoping some of the long-term habits you guys are taking away from this is that we can find really quick combinations. We can think about recipes in a macronutrient way using CPF plus rather than elaborate recipes. We can really simplify our meals. We should really think of the timing of carbs and avoid having carbs by themselves, which I call naked carbs. And we should always think first of protein and fiber in our meals. This is going to help us to eat more slowly and feel more fullness. And so if you guys scan this QR code, I will send you a ebook going over all of this with that macro diagram. I think it's really helpful to hear some of this multiple times. And please reach out if you do have questions, if you're interested in setting up a call or learning about how to get your insulin levels tested along with other metabolic health, nutritional markers. These things can really help just give you a little more self-awareness and insight into where you should focus your energy the most. Okay, so hopefully this was helpful. And again, please think about what you can do to really take action on this and not just learn it. Be someone who is going to incorporate a change, something small from what you have learned. This can be so influential over time and really compound to help your health. So thank you guys for listening, and